Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Sablon. And welcome, Secretary Jewell. It's so good to have you here. After the spill of the Gold King mine, the entire nation, I think all of us, saw appalling images of the river running yellow as nearby counties and Native American tribes declared states of emergency for local residents, and rightfully so. As I mentioned at our previous hearing on this accident with EPA Administrator McCarthy, I happen to come from a district that's rooted in the Industrial Revolution, where rivers used to run different colors depending on the dye that was cast into them at the end of the manufacturing day. As a nation, we have come a long way in deciding that this is no longer acceptable and have made bipartisan commitments to protecting the health of our rivers, for they are directly tied to overall health of our communities. And it was great to have you come to my district to celebrate our Rivers Day and the new role that they play, the very important role they play in our district. The Gold King mine spill into the Animas River and the possible negligence by EPA contractors certainly merits and did merit an investigation and attention from this committee. But one of the most stunning aspects of this accident and the subsequent investigations by both the EPA and the Bureau of Reclamation is that it has exposed just how far behind we are when it comes to environmental cleanups of old hard rock mines abandoned by their private owners when they were no longer profitable. The Gold King mine in Colorado has been closed for 90 years, yet this mine and others in the area have been polluting the Animas River at the rate of approximately, as you indicated in your testimony, reaffirmed in your testimony, 330 million gallons of polluted wastewater a year. That's 100 times more pollution going into the river than the August 5th spill, and the reason that the EPA was working at the site in the first place. BLM estimates that there are 93,000 abandoned mines in California, Nevada, and Utah, and another 23,000 abandoned mines in Colorado, where the most recent spill took place. And there are approximately 161,000 across the entire western United States and Alaska, and some estimate a number as high as 500,000. Yet despite these numbers, there is no dedicated funding source for environmental cleanups of hard rock mines. I'm a co-sponsor of Representative Grijalva's legislation, which would bring the 1872 mining law into the modern age, requiring companies to pay royalties to the American taxpayers for metals extracted from our public lands and create a much-needed funding source for cleanups of old and abandoned hard rock mines. This is an important reform, and it creates an opportunity to address this long neglected issue. But until then, we have to deal with the world as it is. And as I have just mentioned, we have hundreds of thousands of abandoned mines across our nation. Many of them are on public lands, which are depended by Americans for recreation, tourism, clean drinking water, and for many people, a source of their economic livelihoods. You referenced it in your testimony, but can you describe the environmental threat that abandoned hard rock mines pose to our public lands and give us a little more detail on how they affect our national parks?
Thank you for the question and for recognizing the extent of this problem. National parks in particular did a very thorough study that was published in 2014. They estimated that they had something like 37,000 abandoned mine features with about 3,800 that required remediation. Because they're smaller footprint, we're able to do the assessment. They estimated that the cleanup of those 3,800 sites alone would cost about $141 million over 12 years. The BLM has not had the financial capacity to do an assessment, a full assessment or inventory. They estimate just in the states of California, Nevada, and Utah alone, it would cost about $212 million to inventory those sites. They have identified 50,000 sites. As I mentioned, they've got another 5,400 that they're identifying each year. There have been estimates of roughly 100,000 sites, but those are just estimates. We really don't know because we haven't had the capacity or the funding to do an inventory.
Can you talk about the units, the park units, the numbers of park units that have been impacted, and give an example, some examples of particular parks?
Yeah, there's, I think, something like in those 3,800 that need remediation are about 76 units. Is that correct? 76, yeah. An example. There's a a large mine site, I can't remember the name of it, up in Alaska in Wrangell St. Elias. You know, there are lots of sites where our biggest issue is drownings. Sorry, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Gomer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.